case you haven't heard of the Summer Break Cafe, which is South Carolina Department of Education's summer food service program, we are actually a part of the child nutrition programs that are actually administered by the Department of Agriculture and USDA. And so you have the National School Lunch Program that falls under that, the Summer Breakfast Program that falls under that, the child, we call it CACFP, the Child Adult Care Food Program that falls under that. So yes, it's been around quite some time. And so and it's one of the largest, as you see there, largest federal resource available for local sponsors who want to actually, participate in a child nutrition program. All right, now we're going to go to the why. Why do we even have this program? Can anyone tell me how many children do you think go hungry in South Carolina? And this would be like a 5 or 10 or, number like that. 1 in 4 children go hungry in South Carolina. And that's astonishing to even think about. If you got 4 children in a room, 1 out of those 4 children go hungry in South Carolina. So that's why we have the Summer Break Cafe, because we want to fill that gap and that void. And we are so excited again that you all are joining us to try to help us to do that. That number is too big for me to even say.
It's
20,595,958. That's how much we serve. Isn't that amazing? Yes. There were a lot of hungry children with COVID going on. I mean, it was amazing. And 54 sponsors did that. So that was quite an accomplishment. And we thank those sponsors for that. Okay, so now we're going to move on into the meat of the presentations. And we're going to let you know what all you're going to hear about. And take it away, Monica.
Good morning again. Throughout this presentation, we're going to be talking about what is the Summer Food Service Program, the sponsors' eligibility, site eligibility. We're going to discuss some meal service requirements and how to market your program, along with procuring your meals and your financial viability and requirements. And if you have any questions, you can, again, put them in the chat, and we will actually go over the questions at the end of this presentation. Joanne went over the food service. Joanne said some about what the Summer Food Service Program is. It's, like she said, it's a federally funded program, and it's established by the USDA, but it's actually ran and administered by the local states, which would be us, South Carolina Department of Education. And this program was actually, started to make sure that kids are able to receive a nutritious meal when school is out. This program provides free meals that meet federal nutrition guidelines at approved sites to children 18 years and younger. Sponsors are reimbursed. If your meal meet the requirements, you will be reimbursed for each meal that you serve. Okay. So again, we're going to start with the program structure of the program. The main key players in this program, of course, is the state agency, which would be the Department of Education. The sponsors, that would be you all, anyone who want to join our team to be a sponsor, and then the sites. You'll learn more about both the sponsors and the sites as we go throughout the PowerPoint and the program. Okay, so as a state agency, we have a lot of roles with the program. One of them is to approve the sponsoring site application. Then we also conduct sponsors training. That's an annual training that has to happen every year. Right now, this is considered the interest meeting, so this is not considered the training. After you have, fill out your application part 1, but we'll talk more about that later. Then you would receive the date for the new sponsors training. We also monitor the local SFSP operations. We come out and we do visits. We come out to make sure that everything is running, that your program is running the correct way, and that maybe you would need a little bit more technical assistance. We normally give technical assistance. And also, this is a reimbursable program. So another part of our role is to process claims for reimbursement. At the end of your program operation, we conduct an administrative review to assess your entire program operation. That can go from your site visits, from your monitoring, from the financial aspect of it. We just kind of do what we call administrative review at the end of your program operation. And all new sponsors will receive an administrative review. What is a sponsor? From our point of view, we look at a sponsor as an organization that assumes the SFSP administrative and financial responsibility for the summer food service program under an agreement with the state agency. So basically, you would have to have, of course, a signed agreement with us. And then in order to be considered a sponsor, we look at you and we expect you to actually serve free meals to the kids. We also want to make sure that you understand that you will be taking responsibility for anything that happens within the program operation. Who can be a sponsor? Can be a public or private nonprofit school food authority, and we consider those the school districts. We have a lot of school districts that they're a part of our SFSP family to make sure kids are fed during the summer. It can be a public or private college or university. Right now, I believe we have 2 colleges, if I'm not mistaken. I know Claflin, one of our sponsors, and I believe Voorhees, if I'm not mistaken. You can be a private nonprofit organization, or you can be a public or private college and university. So the private nonprofit would be some of you all on the call. You would be considered a sponsor if you meet all of the sponsor eligibility and everything. So private nonprofit can be someone on the line on the chat now. You would be an example of a private nonprofit. Public or private college university can be USC, any public, we have the private colleges and then we have the public colleges. So right now, like I said, we have 2 colleges with us. And I think that's all we have at this point. Unit of local, county, municipal, state, or federal government. That can be, for an example for that would be the Housing Authority. We do have a tribal council that works with us, Indian Reservoir out there in Rock Hill. So these are just some of the, these are examples of who can actually be a sponsor. So if you fall under one of these categories, then you would be able to be a sponsor if everything else works out with your application. Sponsor eligibility. We talked about who can be a sponsor. Now there's that long list of people who are eligible to be a sponsor. What would make you qualify to be a sponsor? Some of the main things are you should be able to demonstrate financial and administrative capability within your program. Later on throughout this meeting, Carl will be able to elaborate more on that. You cannot be declared serious deficient in any other USDA program. Although this is a summer food service program, we still network with all of the other child nutrition program. So you cannot be declared serious deficiency in any other program, or if you're coming from a different state, you would have to make sure those things are taken care of too if there's any deficiencies in other states. You would have to be able to serve low-income children. This program, of course, is built to make sure that you're in communities where the need for a site is needed. The need for sponsor services is needed. Conduct a nonprofit program in which reimbursement funds are used solely for the operation or improvement of the food service program. We had, I remember one of our old team leads used to always get up there and say, "This is not a get-rich program." And, we say that because this program is here to make sure that you understand that you will be reimbursed. With the reimbursement, we just want to make sure that you understand that it should roll back into the program to make your program better and bigger and more successful for the next year. You would have to provide a year-round public service to the community. And it says to the community, but if you go look in the regs, it actually indicates that to the community in which you are wanting to serve. But there are some instances where the state agency may deem necessary to approve you to have sites in other areas and serve the communities in other areas. You would also need to be able to exercise management control over your sites and complete pre-operational visits. Carl will go a little bit more deep with managing your sites, but just make sure that you have the manpower to be able to sustain your sites, to sustain your operation when you're operating in the SFSP program. A couple of more things for the sponsor's eligibility. You would have to have an approved written permanent agreement with the state agency. The reason why this is written like this is because when you are, after you have already gotten approved for the program, and when you sign that contract with the Department of Education, it's a permanent agreement. It's a permanent agreement unless you do not comply with USDA and the state regulations when operating your program. But if everything goes well and we don't have problems where we would have to terminate you from the program, then this agreement is considered an ongoing agreement. You would have to, like I mentioned earlier, a sponsor must not have any negative balances with any child nutrition program within your prior year operation. That just means that if you were with CACFP or SFSP within another state, or even with South Carolina, and you want to come back, you just cannot have any negative balances with us. Getting to the 501c3, we have had a lot of sponsors. They have their 501c3, but there are some rules that comes with having your 501c3. You would have to make sure that you're filing accordingly to your status with the IRS. So your 501c3 must be in good standings in order to participate in the program. SFSP regulations require all nonprofit organizations to be tax exempt in order to participate in the program. And if an organization's tax exempt status is currently revoked or revoked throughout the program operation, you will not be able to participate in this program. Some of the requirements for the sponsors, we went over the state SCDE, we went over our department's requirements. Some of your requirements are to make sure that you attend the state annual training. What that means is every year, your organization, your key players, and these are people, your finance person and your administrative personnel, those people will have to attend our annual training each year in order for your organization to still participate in the program. You would have to locate and recruit eligible sites, monitor, evaluate, and sustain the site's operation, meaning that there are a lot of visits and a lot of paperwork that are going to be required throughout the program. You just need to make sure that you are monitoring your program and evaluating it accordingly. So if there's anything that needs to be addressed when you're going out, just make sure that you're handling those things, because we come right back out and we monitor your program as well. Some more sponsor requirements you would need to do is provide approved nutritious meals to approved sites, hire, train, and supervise staff volunteers. And when you're procuring your food, just make sure that you're competitively procuring your food and supply items. And we have a procurement person that's going to actually talk with you all later on if you want to become a sponsor, and he'll basically tell you how to procure your food properly. I'm going to make sure that You're going to be able to, well, you're going to have to be able to prepare and file claims for reimbursement, and also maintain program documents for 3 years plus the current year. And that's a tricky one. So I just like to say for the past 4 years, because 3 years plus the current, that's kind of like 4 years. The site requirements and eligibilities. Of course, we discussed that sponsors are the ones that actually monitor the program from the sponsor side. And now we're going to talk more about sites and what's required from your sites. What is a site? A site is a physical location approved by the state agency where meals are served and children eat in a supervised setting. Eligible sites are those that serve children in low-income areas or those that serve specific groups of low-income children. And I do want to put out there, while we're talking about sites, in 2021 and 2020 and 2021, we were actually operating a little bit different due to the COVID pandemic. And actually, it's still going right now. But as of today, we are going back to traditional summer unless we hear anything back from USDA, from our national office. But as of today, this interest me in is based on traditional summer. And that's traditional summer just basically means summer, you know, the way how the program normally runs if COVID never took place. So normally, because I know right now some of you may have been seeing different operations where the meals were grab and go and the kids would come pick multiple meals up at one time. But a site during traditional summer, a site is where the children would have to actually eat at that site. And they can probably take a couple of things, well, they can take certain things from the site, but you'll learn more about that during training. Some examples of some approved meal sites are schools. We have a couple of schools operating. We have churches. It could be a playground, community parks, libraries, residential summer camps, and apartment complexes. The apartment complexes, if you make it to training, you'll get more specific rules, requirements with the apartment complexes. But each of these sites, you would have to make sure that you have a site supervisor there available to make sure the meals are being distributed properly. Site eligibility. So we do have rules where, USDA requirement is that a site must be in an area where at least 50% of children are eligible for free or reduced price meals based on the census data, along with the school data, or at least 50% of children enrolled in a program must be eligible for free or reduced meals. And USDA, they have a lot of tools that will help you be able to find your sites and, locate sites properly. We were going to actually try to pull the link, but because of technology, technical differences, I don't want anything to happen while we're trying to pull up a site for you. But what you would be able to do, this is the link here. If you can see my cursor, this is the link here. And you also receive a copy of this PowerPoint, so you have this link with you. But when you go to this link, you would be directed to USDA website, and you would be able to put in an address of a site, and then you would be able to find out whether or not that site is eligible to, whether or not that site meets that 50% eligibility rate. And then also you'll be able to, there are a lot of other mapping tools that you will receive as well. There are a lot of links to this PowerPoint at the end that you would also, you would be able to use those to determine whether or not you need to put a site there, because you will be able to see other sites in that area along with other sponsors who are already operating in that area. When selecting your sites, it is important that a sponsor evaluate the need in that area to make sure that there is actually a site that needs to be there. We get a lot of confusion when sponsors are looking for sites. Sometimes there's a lot of confusions with 2 or more sponsors because they're competing for the same site or trying to target the same area and stuff, the same area or the same children. So since we have a lot of that going on and a lot of conflict with the program when it comes to the sites, when it comes to the sponsors selecting their sites, the state agency usually approves only one sponsor to serve in that area. So just make sure that if you're coming in new, just make sure that you're going and making sure that you're using these mapping tools that we're going to give you, all of these links and everything to make sure that there is not that there is a site or there's a need in that area. Also with sites, children, they, when you're talking about traditional summer, children, they like to come to sites where there are some activities going on. There's something to do. If you're going to be at the playground, put some balls out there, some jump ropes and stuff like that. Children, they want to come where where they can eat and play and have fun. So we always encourage activities when you're selecting your sites. So just make sure you look at things like that. Does the site already have activities going on? So now we're going to move on to outreach and marketing. So once sites are identified, families need to be aware of the program. They need to be aware whether or not it's going to be an open site, what type of meals are going to be. Some examples of the public media that we would, that you can use are newspapers. A lot of people put newspaper articles in there. You can use the school websites, radio stations, television. Someone said they're the news. Maybe they can you probably can network with the news stations, and so what you need to do to actually be a part of, have them to help you advertise your program and market your program out there. Social media, we have the Instagram, we have Facebook, TikTok. We have a lot of things going on now with social media. And of course, a lot of the community places, you can use those too, like the libraries, the grocery stores, local health agencies, and social service organizations. There are a lot of different media that you can use, because you need to make sure that you are getting getting awareness out there about your site, because remember, the goal is to try to feed as many children that you can feed in an area, in a needed area. Cara Moore, she's here with us. Cara, you want to go ahead and feel free to speak, because I can't really read what you're saying, but can you just
go ahead and talk to us, Cara.
Yeah, go ahead, Cara.
From Low Country Food Bank. That's one of our sponsors, guys.
Oh, you're going to put me on the spot. Okay.
Oh, you knew I would. You are going to do it.
I was just saying that we realize we're not the only sponsor in the counties in which the food bank operates. And in Charleston, where many of our own sponsored facilities are located, Charleston County School District is a huge CACFP and SFSP sponsor. And so we don't want to duplicate efforts. We want to fill in gaps where there may be a need. And we always reach out in the spring and ask CCSD's Food and Nutrition Service for their list of local SFSP sites, so that we know where they are planning to serve, so that we don't try to establish sites in the same geographic area, and B, so that we can share that information with the kids and families that we are serving through other programs.
Great.
Okay, great. Thank you for sharing. So these are some good ways to market your program, and networking is also great as well. So we're going to move on to meal pattern. Of course, we have expressed throughout, I believe, each section so far, how important it is to make sure that the kids are fed. And the kids will, and you know that the meals are reimbursable, but a little bit of caveat to that is that it can't be just any meal. It has to be a nutritious meal, and the meal has to meet their USDA requirements. So these are the food components here. You have your milk, you have your veggies and fruits, you have your grains, and you have your meat and your meat alternates. So the meal pattern part section of this PowerPoint will basically just, go into a little bit of details of what we expect and what is considered allowable meals and reimbursable meals with the program. So here's your meal pattern right here. You have your breakfast, you have your lunch and dinner. Lunch and dinner, of course, they have the same components. And then you have your snack. So when you're operating in the program, you can serve a breakfast, you can serve a lunch, you can serve a dinner, you can serve a snack. You can serve up to 2 meals per meal service. Well, not meal service, but you can serve up to 2 meals at a site per day. And when it comes to your breakfast, you can choose, you would have to have a milk, half cup of fruit or veggies, and 1 serving of grain. So if we were to come out there and see anything less than what you're looking at right now anything less than the components that you're looking at right now for the breakfast, then those meals would be considered unallowable. For lunch and dinner, you would need to serve all of the components. If you notice for breakfast, the meat is optional. You do not have to serve a meat for breakfast. For lunch and dinner, you would have to have an 8-ounce milk. You can have 2 or more, but you would have to have 2 servings of veggies and fruit. And what we mean is you can have 2 fruits, or you can have 1 fruit and 1 veggie, but you would need to have 2 servings. And they need to be 3/4 of a cup each. For your grain, you would need to have 1 serving of grain. And for your meat, 2 ounces of meat. And again, this is for both lunch and dinner. So if we were to come out to your site and let's just say 1 serving, the grain is missing, then those meals will be considered unallowable and unreimbursable. And when you move to your snacks, you can serve any of the 2 components when you're serving your snacks. You can serve milk and a grain, or veggies and a grain. Now, the most important thing is, and you'll hear more about the meal patterns and the components and the requirements and everything throughout your new sponsor training. Most importantly, there has to be a milk available for each one of these meal service, but a milk is optional for snack. And when you're using your milk, just want to get this out there now, just in case some of you are already projecting how you're going to serve and what you're going to serve. When you're using your milk, the milk has to be used as a component. So for example, if you're going to put some milk in mac and cheese for your lunch or your dinner, that meal will not be considered reimbursable if you do not have an 8-ounce milk available. So that milk needs to be used as a component by itself. And I threw this food safety and sanitation slide in here under the sites because what happens is, of course, our department comes out and monitor your sites, but the DHEC also comes out as well to monitor your sites. And the first one, it says every food preparation site must have a DHEC permit and a ServSafe food safety management training certification on hand. What that basically means is if you have a site, we have had sponsors where they have the site and they're actually cooking at the same place. It could be like a church with a DHEC permit kitchen there, but that church is also considered a site. So DHEC will come, they will first check out the kitchen, then they're going to actually check out the meal service part of, if you're having a program there, any type of activities there, they're going to come throughout the time that you're actually serving the meals. because they want to make sure that you're serving the meals the correct way and, under the DHEC safety and sanitation guide. And that would be all of your sites. All of your sites will receive a visit from DHEC. And DHEC is, like I said, they're just coming there to just make sure that everybody is serving and following the sanitation and those other guidelines as well. And if DHEC comes out there and if there's just something that, hey, this is just too much, or, DHEC may close that site down right then at that time. But if there's something that could be done, they will write you up and contact our department. What we would do is, of course, DHEC will do follow-up visits, and then we will come out and do follow-up visits as well. And if we feel like, okay, you know what, this site right here, they're just not complying, we have been out here more than once, then we would have to close down your site for failure to comply. Before the state agency approve your program application, a sponsor will have to indicate the method it will use to provide meals to children. Several factors such as the cost of food, the number of meals required, the type of meal services, the number and type of sites, and the facilities available at each site should influence the sponsor's choice. So what we're basically saying is, there are different ways that you can procure your meals, and let's talk about them right now. 3 ways to procure your meals would be self-preparation. You can contract with a food service management company, or you can purchase meals from the school. We're going to just kind of talk a little bit about the two ways of procuring your meals, the 2 most popular ways that we normally get from sponsors. One of them is self-prep. Many sponsors choose to prepare their own meals, which provide them with maximum control over the quality of preparation. All self-prep sponsors you must prepare meals in a DHEC permitted kitchen, of course. Have a ServSafe certified kitchen personnel preparing the food. I like to make this joke in person. I know, at my church, you got those mothers, they can cook their butt off. I mean, make the best food in the world, but that kitchen would have to have a DHEC permit, and also the kitchen manager would need to be ServSafe certified. We will, there's some information that we have at the end of this slide. There is some links and stuff, so that if you're not ServSafe at this time, you would be able to go ahead and find ways to actually receive your ServSafe certification. You would have to also have adequate kitchen and storage space to prepare and store food items. Written procedures on how meals will be distributed from central kitchen to sites. And also we like to say share the wealth when shopping around. And what we mean by that is when you're actually going out to buy your meals and procure your meals and supplies and stuff like that to be able to sustain your program operation, we don't want you to just go to Costco's or go to Walmart or go to, one food service management company if you're, getting certain items from them. So that's what we mean by sharing the wealth. Make sure you shop around and, instead of going to one particular place. And also keep copies of all receipts, delivery tickets, and invoices for financial records. That's a big one right there, because when we do our administrative reviews, that's what we want to see: copies of your receipts, delivery tickets, invoices, financial records, anything that you said, you spent when purchasing your meals. We would like to see the supporting documentation behind it when we're doing your administrative review. Sponsors that decide to contract with the food service management company to obtain meals must meet various program requirements and follow certain procedures as well. So if you're going to contract with a food service management company, you must enter a contract with the food service management that enters a contract with the sponsor to prepare and deliver meals must provide meals that comply with program regulations and their contract with the sponsor. So basically all that is saying is that I know there's a lot of food insecurities and shortage and everything going on right now. But what that looks like is you have to make sure that you're serving a nutritious meal and make sure that your contract indicates that with the food service management company. Make sure, because remember the goal is to make sure that your meals are not only nutritious but reimbursable as well. The agreement must include a start and end date, meal service type, unit price, and delivery options. And also SCD is required to do a vendor review on all food service management companies prior to or at the beginning of the program operation. Yes, we do come out and, well, right now, I'm not sure if we're doing virtually or not, but we would have to come out and do a vendor review with your vendor. And, but at the same time, although a sponsor chooses to enter a contract with the food service management, the sponsor, you remain legally responsible for ensuring that the food service operation meets all requirements specified in the agreement that you sign with the state agency. If the food service management company is found to be non-compliant with USDA and state agency guidelines, a sponsor must be required to end the contract agreement. So there are some incidents where if you're not serving the correct components, or if they're not just following the guidelines altogether, the state agency can end that agreement. Also, if you are contracting with a food service management company, there are some specific program management responsibilities that a sponsor may not contract out to a food service management company. Those requirements include, but are not limited to, assuming official record-keeping responsibilities, including meal count information to substantiate a claim. Basically, all we're saying is someone within that food service management company cannot be the one that's actually filling out your meal count, your daily meal counts. And you'll learn more about daily meal counts at the new sponsors training if you decide to move forward. That anyone within that food service management company cannot oversee the role of submitting claims for reimbursement or train and monitor any type of staff. Any type of staff. I said administrative and site staff, but that's just any staff altogether. They must not determine income eligibility and maintain individual income eligibility statements, along with assuming the role of a site supervisor. So basically, the food service management companies should not be doing any type of administrative personnel work at all within your organization. And if so, all meals served will be considered non-reimbursable if it is, if we find out that a food service management company is in non-compliance with the program rules.
Monica, can I interject something before you go on?
Go ahead, yeah.
Not reimbursable, or if we did reimburse you for it, when we do our review, we can ask for that money back. Mm-hmm. If we find out at any time that meals were served and they weren't supposed to be served in our review of that meal count information, then we ask for money back. So you want to make sure everything is, your I's are dotted and your T's are crossed. When you submit your claim. Yes, this is for sponsors only. Only sponsors are the ones who prepare the meals. The sites are the ones who receive the meals, and they do not have the responsibility to actually prepare meals. It's just the sponsors, correct? and they're saying that 50% are the ones who say they're going to self-prep, and then 20% of the 10 says that they're going to use a contract, and then 30% are the schools. Okay. All right. So I was just curious about that. And of course, self-prep means that you are responsible everything. Food service management company means that you're going to contract with someone in the school, which we encourage that because it's easy. I mean, they're already preparing the meals and such. So 30% said that. So again, like Monica said, in training, we'll go in more specific details about what happens or what occurs or what must occur with each one of these types of preparation of meals. All right, thank y'all for participating in that. And Carl's going to bring it on in for us. And then after he finishes, we'll entertain some verbal questions if you have any. If there are some questions that are directly related to your organization and the way that you're set up, we can address that offline. And yeah, and the last thing we'll do is give you the next steps after this PowerPoint.
Good morning. My name is Carl Toomer again, and I'm going to be talking a little bit this morning about your financial viability and their requirements for the FSSP Summer Food Service Program / SPC program if you decide to go further. First, I want to start off with our new reimbursement rates for this year. Sponsors are reimbursed based on the number of reimbursable meals served multiplied by the appropriate reimbursement rate during the operation. Reimbursements must be applied to operations costs and administrative costs. When we're talking about the reimbursement rates, we're talking about that sponsors are just being paid or based on the number of approved meals that's actually being served times the rate of what the USD requires us to pay. For this year, our reimbursement rates for breakfast, this is in all states except Alaska and Hawaii, and this is for rural and self-prep sites. That means if your sites are in a rural area or if you're preparing your meals yourself, then your the breakfast rate is 2.6050. This is not I round up or down to nearest dollar. It's a 4 decimal point that is carried out. So to be 2.6050 times the number of breakfasts that you served. In all states except Alaska and Hawaii, all other type of meals like vended meals, they will be, or your urban meals, they would be 2.5550. Lunch or supper is 4.5625 rural and self-prep, and urban and vended is 4.4875. Snacks is 1.0775, and urban and vended is 1.0525 cents. Are you financially viable? This is what you really want to ask yourself. Am I financially viable to take on this task as being a sponsor for the FBC food service program for this summer? Can you generate sufficient income to meet operating expenses and debt commitment while maintaining service level? Do you have funds available to cover non-reimbursable costs, which can range from $1 to $10,000 depending upon your sponsor size? Can you operate financially until you receive reimbursement for meals served the previous month? That what we are talking about here is just having enough money on hand to cover the costs of those non-reimbursable costs that you're going to get paid for. This could be anything from meals that you've served that were non-reimbursable that you had to throw out, that you had to discard, or anything like that would cause that meal to be non-reimbursable. And do you have can you operate financially until the reimbursement for the meals served the previous month? Because when you operated in June, you don't get paid, you don't get reimbursed for June until around the 10th to the 15th of July. So we just want to make sure that if you operated June, do you have enough money to operate in July without being reimbursed for June? Do you have the physical accountability? Is there a governing board that meets regularly to review finances? You want to make sure that you have someone who meets regularly to review your finances, to make sure that you're on track with your budgets, and to make sure that you have enough money on hand to account for those things that goes unforeseen, things that you may run across that you didn't budget for, things of that nature. And do you have financial statements and banking records for the last 6 months? You want to make sure that you have been operating long enough to have at least 6 months worth of statements and banking records. Do you have an annual operating budget and financial projections? You want to make sure that you have an operating budget, something to guide you through the process of your spending habits. For your programs. Are you registered in the federal system for awards management? This is what we call the SAMS number. This is the number. This is the number that how you gets paid through the State Department for your reimbursement of your meals. Do you have an IRS Form 990 returns? And this is only for the 501c3 entities. Do you have a unique entity identifying number? This is a number that we issue through the state that I guess I'm assuming it identifies you as a sponsor for that summer. Now, who is responsible for keeping financial records? You want to make sure that you have someone who's responsible for keeping these financial records all in one place so that they're easily located and they're legible and everything is intact. So if someone happens to come out to review your financial records, you would have everything there for them to review. Do you already have an accounting system? Want to make sure that you have some type of accounting system. If you do not have an accounting system, then we have some other sources or resources that we can share with you once you decide to go further with the program. What is your record retention schedule for financial records? We require 3 years plus the current, but we want to know your retention schedule for your financial records. How long do you keep your financial records? Do you have administrative capability? Do you have the ability to, within your organization, to establish, operate, and manage the program according to federal state requirements? And this includes the size and operating structure. Do you have a staff large enough and skilled enough to handle your administrative capabilities? Staffing for management and operation function. You want to have a staff large enough to handle your management and your operation functions, because summer is kind of a quick process, and if you get behind, and it's very hard to stay afloat. So we want to make sure that you have enough staffing in place to handle these functions, when they arise. Written operating guidelines and business process. You want to have written guidelines in place for the process of your business process. How are you going to what are you going to do when certain things happen? In any case, when something happens, do you have a plan in place or some guidelines to try to get you through what's going on? What's your organizational structure? Ask yourself these questions. Is this a vended or self-prep program? Will your kitchen need to be DHEC approved? What will it take to get approved? Because your kitchen will need to be DHEC approved, And what geographic area are you will be covering? I want to make sure that you know the geographics, the mileage of how far you're going to be operating, how long it takes for you to get to one place to another, things of that nature. How many sites will we sponsor? How many sites are you going to sponsor? Starting out, we like to kind of limit, help you kind of limit yourself to just a certain number of sites so that you don't get overwhelmed when summer starts. And then once we walk you through the process, the first summer, and then you have your feet wet, and then you can jump in and maybe add some more sites on later on. Can we support additional sites? How fast can we grow? Should we grow? These are all questions that you should be asking yourself during this summer process of serving meals to the children, because like I said earlier, it's a quick process. It's over before sometimes we even get started. Now, if so, what changes do I need to make to staff and overall program operations? If I'm going to grow, what changes do I need? Do I need additional staff? If I'm going to grow, if I'm going to grow at a faster rate, or how many staff members do I need? How much can I pay my staff members? So that it wouldn't affect my overall budget. These are the questions, or pre-planning. When you get into the pre-planning stage, these are all the questions and things that you want to ask yourself about being financially viable for the program. And should you continue further after this meeting, this would be your next step. This is what we call a application process. It's an assessment that we take of each new potential sponsor. It's just about your organization, things that we're asking you to send us about your organization. And when you complete this form, we need it completed in its entirety, because we cannot accept uncompleted form, and we really don't want to have to keep sending the form back and forth, because it takes up time to do this, and we really want to get the application in, get it processed, so that we can get you ready for the process for the summer. And this is kind of a small version of it. The letter, the writing is small on there, but we will, if you decide to go further, we will send you this application, and then you can read through it. And it's kind of self-explanatory on the things that we need to get from you to process your sponsorship into the program. And this is just a continuation of the application.
Carl, since they cannot see it though, just a brief overview of the sections of what we look for.
Yeah, I can't see it either. So I'm thinking it's just very small. Yeah. Okay.
Well, I mean, I can see the sections are the physical accountability and financial viability, which we look for all types of stuff that will let us know whether you're viable or not, like bank statements and income statements and different things like that. The administrative accountability, we're looking at the staffing that you have at your organization, whether you have enough people to be able to manage the sites that you're planning on operating. We look at things, records from that. We ask for information to substantiate everything about your organization is what we look for. And then we also come out to your organization to look at, to visually look at the area which you plan to operate. So that's kind of the overview of the process. And like Carl said, this is self-explanatory, and this is the information that we would need to determine whether or not you will be able to be approved. And this is our part 1 sponsor application. Okay, Monica, you can move to the next. I think that was the end of it. Okay, is this back to you, Monica?
Yes.
It's back to you, Joanne.
Back to you, Joanne. Okay, and one of the things I was going to mention too about that check, the thing that they're going to complete, there's a checklist, and the reason why we're drilling this really hard because we have every year when we talk to potential new sponsors and getting this pack information has been a challenge because we get pieces and parts, and we have to keep going back and forth. It's so very important to read this thoroughly, gather all your information together. That's why we're going to send this out to you to make sure you send in a full packet. There's a checklist on the last page for you to actually check to see if you have completed everything and sent everything in. You do need to complete applications annually, but not that part one. We haven't, after you finish with this, and if this is approved for part one for potential new sponsors, then you actually submit an online application. The online application you would have to submit every year. This right here, there's different variations of that information that you would have to send. So I hope that answered your question, Ms. Reeves. Okay, so the way we talked about this before, the ways you can get involved, and Atlanta's going to put up a poll. I think she already has it, but you can either become a sponsor after all that you've heard. You've learned a lot about being a sponsor and what it takes. You can become a summer meal site, and if you become a summer meal site, sorry about that. If you become a summer meal site, then that means a sponsor would provide your meals to you, and you would just receive those meals and make sure that you're doing the paperwork and get trained by the sponsor. And we can send out a list of the sponsors that we have or have had, or put it on our website, and we'll let you know about that. Or you can support us. Support existing sites with either being volunteers or supporting them by saying that you want to be a site supervisor. Some sponsors pay their site supervisors, some don't. And we do not control that part. So each sponsor kind of operates, autonomously. So yeah, so you can, check with them. And then you may have some kind of gifts or talents that you want to give some activities, provide some activities for that site. And then also just do outreach, help us get the word out. And you might be able to help coordinate or organize some group, some sites, some activities at the sites. So again, there's a place for every one of you at the Summer Break Cafe table. So we want you to be involved in one of these 4 ways. And Atlantis is actually going to put up a poll now, our last poll for the day, is sponsor or not, so that we can make sure we continue to communicate with you. If you do plan on doing that, the part 1 application, as I mentioned before, is due by April the 15th. And that would be that type of the application part where we look at your financial and administrative viability. That is paramount. You cannot go any further until you send that in and send it in completely and correctly. So we can assess whether or not you are financially or administratively viable in this summer. Just because you're not this summer doesn't mean you can't apply again next summer if that's the case, if you have to get other things in order to do that. Okay, if you plan to proceed also, you must have you must be trained by us. This was not a training, although you might hear some of the same things at the training. This was not an in-depth training. So that training would take place May 4th and 5th. Right now, we're planning for virtual, but if we see where miraculously things just get a lot better, then we would rather have you in person, but we'll stay tuned to that. You have to make sure have a SAMS number, and in order to receive any federal funds, you have to be registered with SAMS, and you have to have a vendor number, and you have to have it used to be called DONS number, but now it's called a unique entity identifier. And we're going to have some links after this page to show you how to access all that. You must have if you're going to serve your food in your own kitchen, you have to make sure that it's DHEC certified, and have to make sure you have kitchen managers that are ServSafe and have food handlers training certification. Then if you're planning on contract, and you have to make sure that you have a contract with your vendor, or identified a vendor, and that's a vendor that has an EIN number, EIN, TIN. That's have all that information. So it can't be, I know somebody that cater, I want to get them. It has to be actual a registered kind of vendor. And let's see, and then also after you go through part 1 of the application process, if that's approved and everything's in order, you will go to the next step, which is the online, and we will get you set up for that. And I already mentioned SurfSafe. And we do not cut you loose and just let you go float out there by yourself. We hold your hand and help you through the process. So don't worry about that. Okay, we gave you the DHEC. If you see that website right there for DHEC, we gave you that. So you could take a look at that as well. Okay, next slide. I think the last slide. Okay, these are some links. And Monica said that we gave you lots of links that you could take a look at. So do that. Take a look at those links, because even at training, we can never give you everything that you need in order to operate your program. This would be your, and we're going to say business, but business in the sense of feeding the children, right? So you got to make sure you learn as much as you can. You know all the rules, and we give you as much as we can give you, but there are some things you have to read on your own as well. So we gave you some links for that. One of the links I know that we need to give, and Amber, maybe you could stick that in the chat, the one about the unique identifiers. Are you able to do that for me? And this would give you the information you need in order to get your SAMS information so that you can receive federal funds, if you don't already have that, formerly known as DUNS number.
What I can do is update the PowerPoint.
Okay, before we send it out.
And put
Okay.
all of the different links in there before we send it out.
That works, that works. Okay, so that's the end of our official presentation. We have about 10 minutes that we can address some questions now. And if we don't get them all, again, there's the Summer Break Cafe. We're gonna update that too. Summer Break Cafe questions, and that you can send questions to us. We will definitely be in contact with you. We will talk to you. We will answer the questions that we have, because we want you to be clear about what you might be embarking upon if you decide to move on to sponsorship. So, but we can entertain a few questions right now if you like. And I have been answering some of the questions in the chat. And there was a lady, if you want to stay on, we could talk with you a little bit more from the housing, that had the connection with the housing authority. Okay.
I did saw a question, and I'm going to answer it right quick because it'll probably help everyone. So someone asked, how would you know if the sites are too close? So there are two different things to that. As I mentioned, USDA site finder, they have a lot of mapping tools, and you would also the link is also here at in the PowerPoint. You can use this link and put that address of the site there, or you can also there's a way for you to only search for sites in that area. So with us, it's kind of each situation is different. You may have 2 sites, and when you come to training, you'll learn more about what a site, what's considered a closed site or an open site. But you may have a playground setting, and they're considered a site. But around the corner, there's a program going on. It's an open program where anybody can come and join, but you would have to enroll in that program before you can, actually, you would have to actually be enrolled in that specific program. So both of those sites, the same children cannot come to both sites at the same time, because that child would have to be enrolled in a closed enroll program or open enroll program in order to receive a free meal, versus just walking to a playground and receiving a free meal. So it just depends on the site type. But if you have a playground here and then you have an apartment complex and they're walking distance, and there's no highways or no intersection or no interstate blocking, that means that child can receive a meal from the playground, then just walk maybe, half a mile to a different site. Then those are considered too close. So it just depends. If there's any intersections, or it's depending on what type of site it is. If it's not two open sites where anybody can just walk up and grab a meal, then you should be fine.
So question for you. I guess what I'm wondering, can we be as sponsors? Is it possible to be too close to another sponsor to be approved for sponsorship?
Oh, so no, it just depends on your area. So you can have two sponsors in the same proximity, but it just means you can't just
As long
serve the
as you
same
target different
area.
sites.
Yes, you cannot
Good deal.
target the same area.
Okay, any more questions?
I have a question. Are you required to serve meals daily? Okay, so you are right now. We're talking. This interest meeting was solely based on traditional summer because I think some of you all, 2020 and 2021, we were doing the pandemic type of, we had a lot of waivers in place and kids can come up and grab a meal and just go home or grab enough meals for the entire week and go home. So traditional summer, it's completely different. Traditional summer is back in the olden days, the kids got to come, grab that meal and eat on the site. And you can, are you required to serve meals daily? Serve what your program can sustain. You're the sponsor. If you want to serve Monday, Wednesday, and Friday only, you can serve Monday, Wednesday, and Friday only. But just keep in mind that you cannot serve multiple meals unless there's a waiver put in place to do so.
And to tag on to what Monica was saying too, now you keep in mind about your sites. Your site might say, okay, I need my meals every day. So they may go look for another sponsor who can provide that. So, but yeah, you, the sponsor, have the right to say, we're going to only serve meals Monday, Wednesday, Friday. But then your site may say, well, I'm going to have to go somewhere else and try to get my meals because I need them every day. So yeah, but yeah, you're totally in charge of how often you as a sponsor will provide the meals. And the site is also able to say, well, we only need meals Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Because I'm not sure if you were asking from a sponsor perspective or a site perspective. All right, any more questions? We have about 5 minutes left. You all have been absolutely phenomenal. And I hope that we have answered your questions and we provided you with enough information to determine what you will want to do from this point. Kara, our Low Country Food Bank sponsor, have put in the chat that, they are a very, very viable and wonderful sponsor that serve different areas. And if you are unable to be a sponsor at this time and need this a service of those areas, she put some information in the chat for you. Okay. Am I missing any questions or anything?
So I have one. I used to work for a former sponsor, so my knowledge is several years old when it was operated by DSS, but wanted to see if there was still the requirement between the break in between meals, like the 3-hour requirement from breakfast to lunch, and if there was a specific time frame in which those meals had to occur.
Great question. Well, yeah. So since Monica mentioned that, before we had all kinds of waivers in place and we were able to serve meals anytime, anywhere, anyhow, because kids really need it. So there were nationwide waivers put in place. But the traditional way is, yes, there has to be like you serve breakfast at a certain time, and we'll get more into that in training, but certain time you had to serve breakfast, and then it went for a certain length of time, and then then you serve lunch, or then you serve dinner, and you had to wrap up about a certain time. Now I just got hot off the press an email from USDA asking if we're going to apply for any waivers, and they let us know which waivers we can apply for. So I haven't had a chance to review it because we've been on the call. But if there is a waiver in there for time, then there's a possibility that we might, submit for that, which means that we would be able to serve the meals with not having that interval in between that's prescribed by the regular summer. But as of right now, yes, there's certain times that you can serve breakfast, certain times you can serve lunch and stuff like that in between meals. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you.
Okay, great. You're welcome.
I think I kind of understand a little bit more about what the question was about. Do you have to serve daily? If you have a
Okay.
scheduled program, like let's say your program only meets once a week, that could be your site. You can just fill out your site application and just state for that particular site, you'll have the option to put, check off a box under each day that you are going to be serving. So if you have a scheduled program, sometimes you get the vacation Bible study and stuff like that once a week or something like that, you'll be able to check off on the box throughout that month how many days you're going to be serving. And when we're talking about site, we're talking about, because some sponsors, they go out and actually contact sites that are already, formed. Like, for example, it's a different with going out on a playground and finding your on site supervisor to monitor that meal service versus there's already a day camp going on every summer, and now you want to approach them and say, hey, do you want to, I'm going to be sponsoring meals this summer. Do you want to be a site under me? So if you want to go and actually pick like a playground and say, hey, you know what, the need is in this area, but I don't have the manpower to serve meals every day, but I can at least get out here maybe Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Then, when you fill out your site application, you would actually submit in the days and the times that you're going to be serving meals at that playground.